Today I'm super excited to test out this 7900X3D on the B650EI Asus ROG motherboard. But first, I'm more excited for this. Do you like free stuff? Good, because we're giving away this free gaming computer on March 26th. We will go live here on YouTube, and all you have to do is subscribe and sign up on our website. Hope to see you there. So we're going to compare gameplay with the 7900X3D with the 13900KF on this test bench. Both will use the Asus TUF 3090 Ti. We'll start off with Cyberpunk, then we're going to move over to Star Citizen. That's what this customer plays the most, and you can meet him right here. Say what's up to Jack Jack. What up, Jack Jack? And then coming up in future content, we're going to install all this hardware in the beautiful case that we stained black. So let's start off with Cyberpunk at 1080p max settings. So as you can see right off the bat, the 7900X3D has a much better 1% and 0.1% low frame time. What this means is it's basically showing how bad the lowest frame rate is. And in most of the tests you'll see, this is where the 3D chips perform the best. So far, no one's reporting any tests that show the 3D chips just being completely better than anything else out there today. In fact, Intel beats this chip still in many different areas and many different games too, as each game is different and some are more CPU bound than GPU. But for what it's worth in these tests, the 13900KF cost $729 upon launch, and the 7900X3D we're testing here is only $599. Neither one of these chips really offer a good performance to dollar, but if you are going to go for the top CPU, honestly, it's down to preference on whether you like AMD or Intel better. I will say that these better frame times with the 7900X3D do offer a much smoother gaming performance even with the blind test, and that's where these result numbers become a little bit more irrelevant because it isn't factoring in the 1% and 0.1% low that's going to give you an overall better gaming experience. Moving over to 1440p with ray tracing off, the 1% and 0.1% low are still a little bit better than the 13900KF, and we're seeing a little bit better FPS at this refresh rate with the 3D chip. One thing to note, this is our first BIOS for the X3D chips. I expect to see some bugs and maybe some more performance squeezed out of it later on with updates. Some of you may have heard some criticism about the X3D chips with the core parking. One thing I recommend, if you believe that these chips are not good because they park half of the cores, then go watch Wendell's YouTube video on Level 1 Techs where he breaks down the 7950X3D core parking. He puts it down to a computer science level where it's pretty easy to understand and it's actually genius. Now the tables have turned a little bit and the 13900KF has actually got a little better 1% and 0.1% low. This kind of represents on how it's splitting hairs, and each of these processors have their pros and cons, some things that they're good at and some things that they're not as good at. So here we have another page of underwhelming results where the 7900X3D performed a little bit better. It's still splitting hairs and just down to preference on which processor you like the best. Now we go 1440p with ray tracing on. Here's where the 7900X3D really falls on its face compared to the 13900KF. Maybe we'll see some better results in the future with BIOS updates and whatnot, but honestly, I don't think ray tracing is worth it anyways for the extra strain it puts on the GPU. You sacrifice a lot of performance for just a little bit of a gain in quality. I just don't think it's worth it. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of fast forward through this part and move over to Star Citizen. Before moving on, I want to show you an issue I ran into with the 13900KF. Look at the CPU usage. It's just insane. This is 1080p, the 1% low is terrible. I just didn't know what was going on at first. Then I realized I enabled game mode for the 7900X3D as it's recommended to. For whatever reason, the 13900KF did not like this at all. After disabling game mode, everything went back to normal. Just something to be aware of and note if you're having this issue. So we'll start our gameplay test off at 1080p. I'm going to try to only say this once, but Star Citizen is a very glitchy game, and I think that's why we're not seeing any values for the 1% and 0.1% low. And to be honest, there's a issue with the 7900X3D. This game does not trigger game mode in the Xbox game bar. It basically doesn't park half the cores like it should, and the processor is basically not operating correctly by utilizing the CCD with the most 3D cache. But the results are still impressive, with that being said, on how better it performs against the 13900KF. I'll show you some issues we had with the Intel chip later on after these tests. It basically resulted in it only getting like 15 to 30 FPS. It was completely unplayable. Keep that in mind if you're looking at playing this game, where hardware compatibility is kind of out the window and you're just going to have to tinker with it if the game is not running smooth. Now let's move on to 1440p. We have a similar split here, but I'm going to slow down the screen here in a minute to show the crazy frame time spike in the 13900KF. That is one overall difference again with the 3D chip and good frame times, where there's less spikes. And the less spikes there are, the less screen tear, the less stuttering, the less frame skips, and just smoother overall game performance. Now to wrap things up, let's talk real quick about the issue I had initially with the 13900KF on this game. So as you can see, it's unplayable. There's just no way. I tinkered with all the settings that I could think of and still no results. So I did what I should have done initially and disabled all the E-cores. Now I know a lot of gamers out there with Intel chips that typically do this first thing, but I personally don't like to do that because I use this computer for multiple reasons, including rendering videos and whatnot, and I just don't want to switch back and forth all the time. And this is the first game that I've experienced degraded performance with E-cores enabled. Anyways, for those of you that have made it this far, I really appreciate you watching this whole video and hope to see you next time, where we're going to unbox and review the B650EI motherboard that the 7900X3D here was ran on, as well as a lot more testing. We have many more games to try out with the 7900X3D, and I really look forward to sharing my results with you as an independent tester that is not affiliated with any of these companies. I'll give you my honest opinion on it, and I would really like to hear your opinion as well. So until then, we'll see you next time.